All right, well, here we go. Well, thanks everyone for those of you that are new. This is our mastermind class. We do one usually the what is it, the third Thursday of every, or third Tuesday of every month, Jalen? Is that what it is?
The last Tuesday, yes.
Last Tuesday. Okay, I was close. Last Tuesday every month, and we do a little quick market update, and then we bring something. A good speaker, that someone that we think can bring a little impact to everybody's life. And we're super excited. We're our guest today as well. So I'm going to jump into the quick market update. I got a good one for you guys today. I've been talking about it for weeks now, but I think it needs to be reiterated over and over again. And what we're talking about is our housing market. You know, is there a bubble? What's going to happen? You know, what is the next step? Should I buy? Should I stay? And I've been talking about this for a long time. The media is talking about a housing bubble. They say the housing market is overpriced. And quite frankly, I don't believe it's true. And I know a lot of experts that don't believe it's true. So I'm going to bring you the truth on the housing market. And here's what it is. The people in the media are talking about the median home price as being up like 11, 12%. And they're saying that that's outpacing hourly earnings. Hourly earnings are up 5%. The median home price is up 11 to 12%. So housing market is increasing almost double or over double what your hourly earnings are going up. The problem is they're looking at the wrong data. When you're looking at the data of affordability, you got to look at appreciation, not the median home price. What the median home price is looking at is how many people are buying houses below the median, which right now is 313,000 nationwide. And how many people are buying houses above the median home price. So you can actually be in a declining market and the median home price could actually be going up. So the median home price is an irrelevant number. It just talks about what the average price of a house being bought. 50% of the houses are over that, 50% are below. Now what we look at to talk about affordability is we look at the weekly earnings. How much do you bring home on a weekly basis that you're taking home that you use to pay your bills? So that's what we're looking at. We're looking at your weekly earnings. How much do you take home? Now on the value, what we're looking at, we follow appreciation. Case-Shiller is the gold standard for appreciation. Everybody that is anybody that's talking about real estate knows that Case-Shiller is the best measure of appreciation. They just came out today with their new numbers for September. They're always a couple of months behind. September numbers nationwide were up 7%. Seattle was up 10.1%. Can you believe that? 10.1% appreciation in the Seattle area. Staggering numbers. But now here's the thing is, weekly earnings were only up 5.6%. So 5.6% weekly earnings are up. 10.1% our appreciation's up. Oh, it's not affordable. That's not true because you don't use 100% of your income to make your mortgage payment. You use about 30% of your income to pay your mortgage payment. So what does that mean to us? That means that we can see about a 15 to 20% rate of appreciation and housing would still remain affordable in this area. Right now we're at 10.1, so we could literally double appreciation up to 20% and homes in this area would still be affordable. So when you're thinking about should I buy or should I rent, the answer is always going to be buy because one, you're going to miss out on 10% appreciation. Now let's say that's probably, you know, a little crazy because the market's got no inventory. But at the same time, even if it's 5% appreciation, you're gaining nothing by renting and you're losing out and missing the boat on 5%, 10% appreciation in your house. Think about it. A $400,000 house with 5% appreciation per year is $20,000 in equity that you would gain each year that if you're renting, you're missing out on. And we don't see any end to this in sight with the low inventory and everything else going on in the market. We feel like the housing market is going to continue to grow at a really good pace. And so the best option right now is to jump into a housing market, find a house that you love, and then enjoy the ride as your equity grows. Does anyone have any questions on that at all? Do you want to shout out a question real quick? Good. I'm glad you all spoke out right away. I normally don't ask for questions, but that's a complicated series there. But I do want to jump into our thing right now. I want to give our guest speaker as much time as possible. You know, with COVID and staying at home and you know, dealing with friends and family at close distances, not being able to get out of the house as much as we want. You know, we're dealing with conflict and relational issues, and we thought, what an appropriate opportunity to bring someone in to talk on this subject. So today we're here to talk about positive and compassionate conflict resolution and communication. With the way this year has gone, I think this is going to be a perfect opportunity for us to learn about ourselves and hopefully help us and our families grow together over the holiday season. Our guest speaker, Dr. David Simonson, thank you so much for coming on. As a local speaker, author, licensed couples and family therapist with a PhD in psychology. He's been in the field for about 20 years and has a unique perspective on why people do what they do, how to work together more effectively, and how to live happily in a big family. So grateful to have you on, man. We really appreciate your time, and I'm super excited to see what you have to say. So without further ado, Dr. Simonson.
Thanks. So I think, Jalen, am I sharing a screen? Are you sharing a screen?
You definitely can, yeah.
Okay, hold on here. So I have a PowerPoint that I want to bring up. But now I got to figure out how to do that with, hold on here. This is one of the things that I was not trained to do was, there we go. So do you see it?
Oh, there it is.
Okay, great. So yeah, thanks for the introduction. So I have a private practice here in Olympia. Been here for about 20 years. Married 25 years, 7 kids. So hopefully I know how to have a peaceful family. I wish everyone was unmuted so I could hear the gasps of like, oh my goodness, how many kids was that? And I have 1 son, so so it's 6 girls and 1 son. So my son is currently at college, so it's just me and a lot of estrogen around me. So one of the things that I've found in working with people just throughout the years, and not necessarily with COVID and what's kind of happening with the election and COVID and everything in 2020, is that it's super important as people to know kind of what hearts we have. And there's a whole book that I'm going to refer to at the end of this talk. But the idea is, do you have a heart at peace or do you have a heart at war? And I'm going to go into, I'll describe that as we go on. But especially now during holiday times, there's some people that love their family, and there's some people in this group, I imagine, that there's angst that comes up and some anxiety that comes up when they think about having to interact with family. And you've lucked out this year because you don't really have to. And you can say, well, you know, COVID or Governor Inslee said that we can't really hang out. And so if you have a family that you don't really want to hang out with, you've lucked out. But one of the things that I wanted to talk about was that in relationships in general, you do not have the magic to change. Because I imagine that on this call, there's someone here that is probably a people pleaser. And people pleasers tend, and that would be a whole nother conversation as well, and a whole nother talk about people pleasers. But people pleasers and people that want to have good relationships often find themselves in bad relationships because they think they have the magic, so to speak, to change it. If I just do this one thing one more time, then this person will finally get it. They'll finally be this kind, amazing person I know they can be. And so I start this conversation out knowing that while you may have great and awesome intentions for a relationship that you want to see be successful, you don't have the magic to change that other person. And if you find yourself getting into these bad relationships over and over again, and I'm not just talking romantic, I'm talking like friendship relationships as well, you may want to step back and think, okay, do I have unrealistic expectations for this relationship? So let's get back to the basics. So most people know this. This is called Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Most people learned it in Psychology 101 class, right? So your basic needs are food, water, warmth, rest. You'll die if you don't get those needs met. The next, we're starting at the bottom of the pyramid. So the next is safety needs, safety, security. Once you have those needs met, then you start getting up to like psychological needs. of intimate relationship, friends. These are things that you'll still survive if you don't get those things, but life becomes more complete if you have the psychological needs met. And then we go up to self-fulfillment needs. Again, you won't die if you don't get these needs met like you would if you don't get your basic needs met. But this self-actualization, achieving its full potential, being creative, kind of self-awareness, knowing yourself, that's like the ultimate goal of the Maslow hierarchy of needs. So what I want to do is break down into like pretty specific things, what makes about hearts. And if we have time, then we're going to talk about like fair fighting rules that you can have with your partner or with your friends or in your workplace even. Let me get here. So let's talk about the things that lead to a poor relationship. There's lots of things. You may have a broken picker. If you find that you are divorced several times or you have lots of breakups in your past, there's a good chance your picker might be broken. And that's not good or bad. I mean, it's just what is. And so if you define that your picker's broken, it's probably good to talk to someone like me or someone else that isn't involved emotionally with you to kind of point that out to you and help you figure out why that is. Family of origin is a huge part of how we interact with our present day relationships. So for example, if you grew up in a home where you were controlled and everything you did was micromanaged. Now it looks like, Jaylyn, do we have a father of yours on here?
Yep, my dad is on the call.
Is your dad on here? Yeah. Oh, we could use you guys. I won't use you as an example, but I'm just picking on you because you have the same last name. If you grew up in a home where you were controlled or micromanaged, oftentimes you'll make a declaration to yourself, when I'm an adult or when I'm in a relationship, I'm not going to let anybody control me. And guess what? You get into a relationship where someone asks you, hey, could you do this thing? Wow, you're controlling me. And then fights break out. Right? About control. And there's numerous other examples. And that's how family of origin impacts us as adults. What we experience as children impact us as adults today in our relationships. Another thing that leads to poor relationship is neediness. And this can come back to family of origin. Perhaps in your family of origin, you didn't really good in nurturing and connecting with a mother or father. And so then you grow up really looking for that and relying on somebody. And maybe they don't want that. But they still love you and they still care about you. And then a lot of fighting breaks out because of that. Low self-esteem, this could come from family of origin issues again. Addictions, anytime there's addictions in relationship, whatever the addiction, that's going to cause problems. Unless you're with another addict, then you might just kind of feed off each other, but that's fairly dysfunctional as well. So addictions typically lead to poor relationships, and mental health often leads to poor relationships as well. And all of these are solvable. But you have to be the one. If we go back to the hierarchy of needs, at the very top, there's this self-actualization piece. The self-actualization is where you start recognizing these things in yourself, like, whoa, this is something that I need to get fixed and figured out in my life because I keep having patterns that come up in my life. So what you want in a healthy relationship is respect. And respect could be listening, valuing the opinion, even if you disagree with them. So if you were going to be hanging out with family members during Thanksgiving or Christmas, chances are, just slight, you may talk about politics. You know, just this small little election that just happened. And this is a question you ask yourself, can you listen to somebody and be okay with what they say, right? There's this, or can you agree to disagree, or can you just agree to not talk about a certain topic and then keep that boundary? This has to do with respect of the person. Now, the challenge for you, maybe you may have zero respect for the person. And that's where you have no care of a boundary, right? You will talk about something because you don't care if their feelings get hurt. But respect is something that you want in a healthy relationship. Honesty is something that you want. So last night I was talking with a couple, and the male partner in the relationship, he's very direct, and he says, I tell it like it is. I don't sugarcoat things. Which on one hand, you know, okay, that's great, because then you don't have to worry about him lying, but then that could also be very hurtful on the other hand. And so are you an honest person in your relationship? So do you tell people where you're going? Do you hide things? Do you keep things under the carpet because, well, if I talk about this, it's going to create a fight? Now, I'm married 25 years, right? And so I've learned that there's certain topics that are going to create arguments. And any of you that have been in lengthy relationships know that there's certain topics that are going to create arguments, and you just disagree. And so you just don't bring it up. Now, does that have to do with honesty? No, I don't think that has to do with honesty. I think that has to do with just being smart in your relationship. And I'm talking about the very direct things, like, hey, where were you last night? Oh, I was at this one place, when really you're at another place. That's kind of what I'm talking about when I talk about honesty. I'm not talking about, wow, you look like you've gained 20 pounds. Maybe you should lose a couple, right? That's honest, but that's hurtful and not tactful. And I'm discouraging people to go away from that kind of communication. Negotiation. Now, a lot of the people I work with are families working with and teenagers. And if any of you have teenagers here, you have not taught them how to negotiate, my encouragement is today you go home and you start teaching them how to negotiate. And again, I'm assuming I'm talking to mostly realtors or all realtors in this call. And so at some level, you probably have negotiated at some point with another person in your business aspect. And so I'm hoping that you have that skill in your personal relationships as well. And so, are you willing to compromise? Are you willing to have a resolution? The ultimate goal in a relationship is to have a resolution. A resolution is two people giving something up that they're okay with giving up to create peace in the relationship. Below that is a compromise. A compromise is you're willing to give something up, you're not thrilled about it, but you're willing to do it because you know that it's going to create peace. Most relationships have compromises in them. Ultimately, I think the longer you're married, the more likely it is you have resolutions. And so for your relationships with your friends, do you compromise? Is it always about you, or is it about both of you at times? With your kids, is it always about you, or is it always about your kids, or is there a healthy give and take with you and your kids? The goal is that it be a healthy give and take. Safety. So are you a safe person? And so what I mean by this, do you keep confidences? Do you threaten? Do you gossip? Are you passive aggressive? I grew up in a pretty legalistic home. And so what that created in me was this passive aggressiveness that social media is great for it, because here's a confession time. I confess this all the time to my clients, but I don't mind trolling people on social media because I will never meet them, and it fulfills this passive aggressive side of me. It's bad. I know. I know it's completely a bad thing to do, but it's something that I do, and so I know that about myself. And so when I was early on in my marriage, passive aggressiveness was not great, and so I've been married long enough to know to keep that in check, because it's kind of this natural thing that I'm able to do. And so my encouragement, like, are you like this with your friends? Do you gossip with your friends when the other friend is not there? Do you keep confidences about, like, your friends? I got to tell you this thing, don't tell anybody else. Do you keep that, right? Are you a safe person? That would be another sign of something that is healthy in a relationship. Are you a servant? And what I mean by this is everything about you. Do you want to make life better for your friend, for your partner? My daughter, who just got home from college, was telling me about her roommate that over and over again, my daughter would talk about a story and the roommate would one up her or want to tell her own story about something crazy she did. And it was just very off-putting to my daughter. She just kind of didn't want to be around this person because every story ended up coming back to the roommate somehow. And so this is where, again, we're at the top of the pyramid for the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Do you do this? Is this something that you do? And if it is, do you actively try to not do it? Because people don't want to be around you if this is how you interact with them. And so if you want to have a healthy relationship, it's something to kind of put some focus and put the microscope back on you and think, am I doing this in my relationships? Self-control. So are you able to not get into an argument when one is presented to you? Are you able to keep your tongue? Let me move something here. There we go. A lot of times what I've found is that, you know, occasionally you run across a person that says, oh, I don't hang out with women a lot. Like if I'm talking to a woman and she goes, oh, I have a lot of guy friends because I don't like the drama with women, right? And inevitably, as I talk to them, or what I find out is that they seem to be the center of the drama with all these women. And so one of the things that I encourage people to do is have self-control. Right? You don't always have to get into an argument. Everything doesn't have to be dramatic. And so if you find that you're somewhat dramatic, or if you find that you keep going into places where there's a lot of drama, perhaps you're the common denominator in it, where you might be looking at everyone else as the issue, but maybe you're actually the issue. And so if you want a healthy relationship, self-control is something to have, because for those of you that are in a relationship, you're not always going to be thrilled about what your partner's doing or what your friend is doing. And it's okay to bite your tongue and build the scar tissue up on your tongue occasionally, because they don't have to know your every thought, that you don't like how they did the coffee that morning. And just because you were annoyed, right? What I encourage people to, like, step back for a minute and just keep things to yourself occasionally. And this has to do with self-control. Individuality. So Jerry Maguire, for those of you that know Jerry Maguire movie, it was the worst movie in terms of relationships, because Tom Cruise, that big thing, you complete me. Like, oh, that kills me as a relationship therapist, because you do not want to be in a relationship with somebody that completes you. Because what that means to me is that you're a broken individual and you're looking for someone to fit into that broken space. And chances are that other person is a broken individual, and they're probably looking for someone to complete them as well. What I encourage people to do, and it's kind of this, it's vague, but what I encourage people to do is, like, become a complete person first, and then find another complete person. Because if you're looking to complete somebody, there's going to be probably more problems that come up, because you have these unresolved issues and unresolved things in your life that you're looking to this other person to solve. And so a lot of times people compromise because they think this person is perfect for me. Yeah, they drink a lot, but I can overlook that right now, and it'll get better when we get married. Guess what? It doesn't get better when you get married. For those of you that are married, and for those of you that have been divorced, you know this is true. And so my encouragement is, and this isn't just in romantic relationships, this is also in, like, friendships as well. You may have that one friend that keeps flaking on you. And remember what I said about magic. You think, well, if I just really dig into this relationship, they'll stop flaking. Chances are they won't, because that's kind of who they are. And so you either have to be okay with that and overlook it, or you need to possibly get into a different relationship or limit your interaction with them. And so individuality, I think, is super important to be in a healthy relationship. This last one, emotional intelligence, is it's huge. There's lots of books that are written on emotional intelligence. And so me talking about it right now is not going to really cover the span of what we could talk about in regards to it. basically in a nutshell, there's high emotional intelligence and low emotional intelligence. And if you have high emotional intelligence, that tends to create closeness and emotional intimacy. If you have low emotional intelligence, it tends to create distance and fighting. And here's an example of the two. So let's say you're in an argument with your significant other or your a close friend or whatever. You say, hey, I don't like the way that you do this thing. Pick a topic, whatever it is. I don't like the way you do this thing. So the response, or let me back up, or your partner says to you, hey, I don't like the way you do this thing, right? And so your response will define whether you have high emotional intelligence or a low emotional intelligence. So when someone critiques you and points out something, do you get defensive and immediately go to a place where you want to point out their flaw? Or do you step back and think, yes, that's true, they're right, I did do that thing. Do you own it, and then you make amends if you need to make amends? And so, for example, low emotional intelligence would be, hey, I don't like how you are on your phone when we're at dinner, right? And then the response of the other person, well, you're on your phone when we're watching a movie. That would be an example of low emotional intelligence. And there are going to be fights that come from that. There's going to be distance that comes from that. There's going to be loss of relationship that comes from that. But if your friend or your significant other says, hey, I don't like how you're on your phone during dinner, and you respond with, you're right, I'll try to be better at that, I'm sorry, put your phone down, and then you have dinner and you interact face to face with people, that's an example of high emotional intelligence. Now that is much harder, because I think our society trains us to be responsive and to be aggressive. And if you, media, right, pull up a newspaper and the newspaper will be showing two sides battling about a certain topic, right? Or if you've ever backed out, this happened to me, you back out and you don't see a car and they honk and they go by and they're flipping you off and you can tell they're cursing at you. Maybe that was one of you too that has done that. That's an example of low emotional intelligence, because I didn't purposefully try to back out in front of that car. It was an accident, right? And so how you respond to one another when these things happen really shows kind of the emotional intelligence that you have. It has nothing to do with smarts, has nothing to do with book learning. It has to do with emotion. That's why we call it emotional intelligence. So that leads into this idea of what kind of heart do you have? And there's a heart at war and a heart at peace. Okay, this is a little bit, I'll just kind of let you soak this in for a minute. So at the very top of this chart is behavior, right? What you might be doing, saying, thinking, or feeling. And then, and you see a behavior. How you treat that person determines whether you have a heart at peace or a heart at war. So do you see people as objects, or do you see people as people? Okay, so here's the example for me. I was in a Target several months ago to return something. Maybe some of you have returned things before. And I was sitting there, I was about like sixth in line, and I had an appointment that I was going to be missing out on, and I needed to get to this appointment. And so one of the things I started to do, so what's taking so long? What's going on? Why is that person up there? Why can't they just hurry this along, right? And if any of you are like me, you've experienced that, whether it's with, being in line somewhere. And what I started to realize was I was viewing that person up there as an object, as an annoyance, as someone in my way, instead of, oh, you know what? They have things that they need to take care of just like I do. They have things going on in their life just like I do. I chose to stand in this return line even though there were 6 people behind me or 6 people in front of me. So you see the difference there is how we start viewing people, right? And I think this happens with our partners. Like you wake up in the morning and there's something left on the counter and you immediately start, why did they leave that on the counter? Why couldn't they have done such and such? Why? You start viewing them as an annoyance. you start viewing them as an object. It could be a coworker who doesn't clean up their desk, let's say. It could be a client who's late to a client meeting. The thing that I would encourage you to do is step back and think, how am I viewing them? Am I viewing them with a heart at war, or am I viewing them with a heart at peace? And there's a whole book related to this called Heart at War, Heart at Peace by Arbinger Institute. If it's something that is of interest to you to read, it really changed my perspective on how I view people in regards to just daily living. And the thing that I think it really pertained to my earlier example of being in a parking lot. You know, backing out, someone honks, flips me off, curses me out, and keeps on driving. That's an example of a person that has a heart at war. Because I did not mean to back out in front of them. My response was to be sorry, because I recognized that I did something wrong. And again, who knows what's going on in their life. Maybe they just had a family member that died, and so they were super stressed, right? It's like why people with road rage have hearts at war, generally speaking. And so my encouragement to you is, what kind of heart do you have as you go throughout the day? Do you have a heart at war or a heart at peace? Do you view your kids as annoyances, irritants, or objects, or do you view your kids as people that are trying to learn about life and trying to deal with COVID and deal with all the craziness of social media, as an example? I wanted to share, Jalen, how much time do we have?
We're doing good on time, but I do have 2 quick questions for you.
Okay.
So the first one that just came up was on the war and peace descriptions. Were they flipped by any chance?
You know, I was looking at that, and I think they were.
Okay.
I pulled that off the web, and then I just looked at, whoops, where'd it go? And I just looked at it now. When I was looking at it, I was thinking, oh wait, those are flipped. So the heart at peace should be over where the heart at war is. And so heart at war is you see people as objects, less real. And the heart at peace, you see people as people. They're just as real as you. And you respond to their humanity. So yes.
And then the other thing on this slideshow was when you were talking about individuality, we had a question, is that actually setting you up for failure, as none of us are ever complete and unbroken in some manner?
The being complete, you complete me part.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's a good question. I don't think it sets you up. I would say that if there are glaring deficits that you have, so let's say you're an introvert, as just an example, and that's not a deficit, but that's just a personality style. So let's say you're an introvert and you think, oh, I really want to be able to get out and be out more, but I just can't do it. So inevitably, a lot of times you end up with somebody that's an extrovert. But the problem then becomes is like that extrovert wants to be out and hanging out, going to parties, getting energy from other people, and the introvert's like, whoa, this is too much. And initially, it's like great, it's fun, it works, but then like for the long-term part of the marriage, it doesn't usually work out. And that's kind of what I'm viewing. When I view relationships, I view long-term. I don't view like 1 to 2 years. Because most of the couples that I'm working with, they've been married for a period of time, and there's something that hasn't been working for a long period of time, and I'm the last resort to divorce, unfortunately. And so so I think individuality is important, but I think if there's a part that you think you really are lacking in, and so you're looking to someone else to fill in that part that you're lacking in, that's where I think you're going to get into trouble.
And not to say that introverts and extroverts aren't compatible entirely. It's just that when they are on the extreme ends and looking for that other person to fulfill that need, that's when it becomes an issue, right?
Right. And I think it's like, yeah, like individually, those are just personality styles. It's what you do with those styles, right? And so if there's a person that's like, I don't know, like an adrenaline junkie, I gotta go skydiving, I gotta do these extreme sports, and they're married to somebody that's not really into that, I mean, that's probably fine. But when it starts impacting the relationship negatively and no one wants to change because that's just who I am, you knew that when we first got married, that's where I think people need to be a bit more particular in who they're deciding to marry. And that's why premarital counseling is important, and all kinds of conversations like that.
Perfect.
Good call on the detail person that saw that this was flipped. Okay, so I want to share these fair fighting rules. So these are generally a good set of rules to have. You can call them principles, guidelines, whatever you want to call them is fine. To have with it in your household. I mean, you could even have them in your workplace as well. And so there's just several ideas that if people follow these, chances are they're going to be able to get through whatever arguments that come up. So before you begin, why do you feel upset? Are you upset because the mustard's on the counter got left out, or are you upset because you're feeling like you're not being taken care of in the relationship, right? A lot of times, I mean, you know, like something sets us off, but that's not actually what it is that that's not what the argument is actually about. Discussing one issue at a time is super important. A lot of times you'll discuss one issue, it'll bring up another issue, you rabbit trail down to that, which will bring up another issue, and you rabbit trail down to that. So the initial issue that you had doesn't get resolved. And then you leave the argument with nothing solved. One solution that I encourage people to do is when you know what you're going to argue, when you know what you're arguing about, write it down somewhere so that you can always just kind of be focused on that's what it is. And then you can go back like, whoa, we're getting off topic. Let's stay focused on this. That's a good thing to do with your kids, with your partner, maybe with your coworkers. No degrading language. I know, I mean, some people just like to swear, okay? Swear, great. If you like to swear, great. But directing it towards someone is not kind. And especially if it's someone that you say you care about. And so if this is an issue, my encouragement is to really is to stop it as much as you can. Especially if you do it in front of kids. Kids see that and they will start doing it themselves.
Dr. Simonson, really
yes.
quick, I'm sorry to cut you off. Are you sharing a different screen, or are we still on the questions PowerPoint slide?
Oh, I thought it was, can you not see the PowerPoint? I mean, can you see the fair fighting rules?
No, we can't, unfortunately. I don't think it flipped.
Okay. Oh, wait, I need to do a new share.
Oh, there they are.
All right. Sorry about that. Okay, so then the expressing feelings with words. This is a biggie that people often do. In a conversation, they will say something to the effect of, you make me so fill in the blank. You make me scared. You make me angry, whatever. And if you're a client of mine and you say that to me, I don't tolerate that. I don't accept that, because ultimately you can't make a person feel a certain way. That person can do things and it pushes up against trauma that you have. And that's where feelings usually come up. And so I have a whole thing where we talk about like figuring out a person's needs and determining like what are the needs that are being pushed on or not being met. And so when you get into an argument, it's super important to own what you feel instead of pointing the finger at the person and saying, you're making me feel this way. That's blaming them. You should just own it. Just say, I feel scared. I feel hurt. I feel whatever it is. And that radically changes the conversation if you have it that way. Take turns talking. A lot of times people talk over one another. I guess, Jalen, I can send this form to you and then you can disperse it out to people if you want.
That would be perfect, yeah.
Take turns talking. I even have people set timers if they need to, and if you set your timer for a minute, you got to be done, even if you're mid-sentence. like we've got to have boundaries around the taking turns talking. No stonewalling. Stonewalling is basically, I'm done talking about this. I'm not going to talk about it anymore. And then you just walk away and you don't talk about it. That's one of, if you do that consistently in your relationship, that is one of the key factors of leading to a divorce or an ending of a friendship. And so my encouragement is to not stonewall. No yelling. Arguments are not won by who's the loudest. And if you get to the point where you are starting to yell, my encouragement is to take a break, which goes down to take a time out if things get too heated. And this basically is like, hey, it's knowing what you're feeling. It's knowing yourself. And you think, man, I'm starting to get out of control. I don't want this to escalate. I need a break. To think about it possibly, and then let's come back in 30 minutes. And the goal is to come back in a calmer state of mind. And then finally, the attempt to come to a compromise or an understanding is super important. Like I talked earlier, the resolution would be ideal, but a compromise is usually more possible when it comes to, like, you know, even Christmas. Whose house are we going to spend time at? What Christmas gifts are we going to get for who this year? Where are we going to have dinner? You know, compromise is awesome. And it's not giving up of, and this is where family of origin comes in. Maybe you grew up in a home where compromise, it was always the parents' way or no way. And so then you grew up thinking, man, I'm going to make sure it's my way when I'm an adult. Well, that's a problem, potentially, for people. All right. Any questions?
We did have one, and I apologize, Daisy, I'm not entirely sure which part you were talking about, but and feel free to unmute yourself or type in the chat again. But she had a question about just basically dealing with difficult clients and was hoping for some professional examples. Some point near the top.
Difficult client, like my own difficult clients?
Just dealing with difficult clients, I think, in general. So if, like from a realtor's perspective, basically. Okay.
I have never played a realtor on TV, and I'm not one, so I will take a guess. One of the key things for me when I work with people is that I am not emotionally attached to them. And so they can be as outrageous as they want to be. And for me, I feel like I'm often just a spectator, right? And so when you're dealing with, again, I would imagine in the real estate world, there's a range of people that you're interacting with. There's some people, it's a first-time home buyer, they're excited, wow, and so then you join in with them. There's potentially an emotional connection that's being created there. And when you connect emotionally with somebody, that's always dangerous. It's risky. Because that means you can have joy with them, but then you also can have hurt and anger with them. And so I think going into relationships, like client relationships, you just have to be very aware of what your own trigger points are. And so if you grew up in a home with an overbearing parent, let's say, and your client is overbearing, guess what? It's going to trigger you. But I think, as we talked with the hierarchy of needs, the more you can self-aware, I'm not going to, the word won't come out, but the more you're self-aware about that, the more you can create boundaries for yourself in regards to it. And so that would be like talking to a coworker and saying, hey, this person really gets to me, right? And that requires some vulnerability. And so hopefully you have people you work with that you can be vulnerable with and support one another with. And so if it's something like this, would you be willing, and again, I have no idea if this is possible in the real estate world, but would you be willing to come out with me with this client because they really trigger me, they really like overwhelm me, right? Something like that. Or can you meet with this client for this particular meeting because they're offensive, they trigger me, they're overwhelming. It's some of this is going to be getting good support from your team that you work with, I think. And some of it may be you may not be able to work with somebody. And again, like in my profession, I don't usually work with individuals just because I've found over time that it just tired me out working with individuals. I would be in a session, I'd like, hey, what's going on? Not much. And that'd be the first 10 minutes. And so then for the next 40 minutes, I'd have to figure out what are we going to talk about. Whereas working with couples and families, it's much more interactive. And so for me, when a person calls me individually, I try to forward them on to someone else because I know myself and I know that it's not something that I can, it doesn't mean I don't care about them. I just know it doesn't work with me well. And so I think in your profession, you have to know yourself and know what you can and can't work with. And then gain support. Yes.
So on what Jalen was asking you, and I'll give you an example, is we deal with like clients that treat us as objects, basically. I think that's what we were looking for. And I think you got into that. But so like a person with a heart of war, right? They look at us as an object, like we're a facilitator to get them what they need, but we work for them and they could care less about our schedules, about our family, about anything we do, and they're willing to drop us in a heartbeat. Like if we don't react, when they tell us to jump and we don't say how high, they could walk away. So they have this negative connotation. And I think we all in the real estate world have ran into those types of clients. And what I found in my personal experiences is I've walked away. Like I got to the point in my career where it's like, that person's going to drive a negative review. It's going to be a negative experience. I'm going to take that home to my family and be negative with them because I have to deal with this client. So I've chosen to walk away. But in the real estate world, that's not so easy. Like, a realtor, especially, that's a paycheck. That could be a pretty sizable amount of money. Is there any way to deal with those kinds of clients to bring them back to normalcy? Or is it something that you just got to walk away?
You don't have the magic, right? Like that's the thing, right? So I think this goes to a whole nother conversation about what's your mindset. And so if you have a mindset of scarcity versus a mindset of abundance, and I don't know, for some of you may have never heard those concepts before, but in my profession, there was a point where I was like, oh man, I'm always nervous. I got to get clients. Oh, I can't interact with this other professional because they're going to take clients away from me. And it made me anxious. Yeah, I was always worried about where my next client was coming from. It just wasn't pleasant, right? And so I got to a place where I realized that, there's plenty of clients out there. And I just view things through a lens of abundance. Like there's always going to be opportunity available. And so then I freely give referrals out to other therapists because I truly believe that and my life got a lot less stressful, right? And so Jeff, as you were saying, like at some point it has to come to a place for you, not you, Jeff, but you as a group, you have to get to that place where you think, I'm okay with walking away from this person, even though it's a paycheck. Like if you view it from, I got to get this paycheck in, I got to get this, you're going to attract people to you that are gross and icky, right? That they view you through this lens of like, you're just an object to me. I'll go to realtor B down the street if you don't jump through this hoop that I want. And so at some point you think, man, I don't want to jump through hoops anymore. Does that mean I might miss out on some really good paydays? It may, but my experience is that it won't. But you have to be all in on that. Like you have to be fully invested in this idea. Like real estate's always going to be around. And there's always going to be people wanting to change hands with real estate. And I really believe if you operate from a place of abundance, it changes your attitude and it changes how people view you. Like, I can't explain it. It's kind of vague, right? But I think that there is this, the more I became like this idea, like I'm going to share, I'm going to be not scarce, not like desperate for clients. I'm booked like 3 weeks out and people still call me now. And so I think if you're viewed as this person that's positive, that is relational, works well with others, I think that's going to bring way more benefit to you than like, I'm desperate to make money and I'm desperate to keep clients. I don't know. That's the best I can give you.
No, I think that's what we were looking for. I mean, that's what I was looking for. It's really, you just got to walk away is what you got to come to. You got to get to a point in your business that if there's someone treating you like dirt, that's going to continue and it's not going to change. And you just got to move on or decide that that's what you're going to be treated as. And then on the flip side, that person's only going to attract those kinds of people too. So walking away is probably long-term a better thing. And then you can focus your time on the people that you do like to work with, and they are going to refer people that, again, will be similar to them and you'll like to work with them as well. So that makes a lot of sense there. Thank you for.
Well, I mean, I think Jeff, you said too, it's like, there's a ripple effect to that, right? Because then you go home to your family and you feel positive. You don't feel stressed. I was, as you're talking about, I view it like kind of as an open hand, closed fist versus an open hand. And a scarce, looking from things from a scarcity perspective is like a closed fist. Like, oh, I got to keep these. And my encouragement is like, if people have open hands to things, things can come and go, right? And so I try to have open hands to things as much as I can.
And the other thing I'd throw out as advice on that too, and I'm not a PhD by any means, but I do have a mortgage PhD, if there is such a thing. No, I'm kidding. But what I've experienced on that is you got to set expectations up front early on in those relationships. And as long as you establish those expectations that you're the professional and that you're going to do everything you can to help them, but that you have these limits that you're willing to go. And just to give you guys an example of what I've changed in my business that saves my entire team a lot of time is estimates. Like a lot of clients want an estimate on what's my payment on this house? What's my payment on this house? What's my payment over here? If I did estimates all day, I would get nothing else done but do estimates for clients. So what I do is I set the expectations when we first pre-approve them and say, here's an estimate. You can use this rule of thumb to calculate payments on a huge range. Use that estimate as your calculator for now until you find the right house. Then let us know and we can give you a specific estimate. I feel like that saved us a ton of time. And by setting that expectation up front, we don't have clients constantly calling us all the time asking for updated estimates on every single house they look at. So I think for a realtor standpoint is going into it, establish yourself as a professional, show your client the benefits of using you, like why you're so good, a good negotiator, you're going to take the time to research the house, your relationships with other realtors, things like that. And then set the boundaries of where they can call you. They shouldn't be calling you at 9 o'clock at night. That's just not fair for you. And it's not fair for them to do that to you as well.
And if you have a scarcity mindset, you'll answer at 9 at night.
Exactly. The abundance mindset, man, that was a game changer for me. It took me probably close to 20 years to figure that out. But once I figured it out, it was the best thing ever that I ever changed.
Yeah,
sure.
in my profession, there's people want consultations. And so a lot of times people will give a free 15-minute consultation to somebody. And I just don't have time for that. Like, I just put myself on my website. If people like that, they can call me, schedule, and then we get to meet for the 50 minutes that we meet. And then they can decide if they want to hire me or fire me, right? So I think that if it's just being smarter with your time, it's being smarter with how you manage your business, I think. And being confident in yourself as well, and knowing that you know what you're doing.
No doubt.
So, Dr. Simonson, so we did have another question while you guys were talking, and along the same lines. So whether you're in real estate or whatever your profession, is it possible to connect with a client without being emotionally involved? Is empathy attached to emotion?
That's a good question. No, I mean, I think that's the whole essence of connection is creating this emotional thing, right? So there's one of the things I hate in drive-thrus is idle chit chat. So you go up to Starbucks, hey, how's your day going? And I just like, oh, I cringe at that because like they don't care. Really, do they care how my day is going? And that's an attempt to connect, but I think it's a false attempt to connect. And so that false attempt to connect is I cringe at that. And so I guess you'd have to ask yourself, the connection that you're making, is it a genuine attempt or is it a false attempt? A genuine attempt is an open-handed invitation to share things emotionally, right? A false attempt is like, it's not open-handed, it's closed-fisted. I'm doing this because I have to make Starbucks seem like we care about you, right? And so I guess I would say it's very hard to, I don't want to say it's impossible, but I think it would be very hard to connect and not genuinely connect and not have some kind of emotion flow between the two of you. So it's risky, I guess. If you're going to try to connect with a client, it's risky because your client's not, I mean, how is your client viewing it? Are they viewing it as idle chit chat, or are they viewing it as, oh, this person cares about me? Because if you're genuinely trying to connect, there's some kind of emotion that's going to be passing between the two of you. And again, there's risk there. I don't know, does that answer the question?
We did have some immediate pushback with people saying that, you know, it doesn't do harm to try to help people feel connected, and I think we just might need a little bit more of an expounding on that concept to really help drive it home.
Oh, so the idea is that the idle chit chat is I'm wrong about the idle chit chat.
That is what a few people are insinuating in the chat.
That's fine. I mean, they're welcome to agree to say that. I mean, I don't value idle chit chat. But what?
That response is a war heart, not a peace heart.
It could be. So here's the thing about heart at war and heart at peace is that it's a continuum. It's not, you're not just one way and you're not just the other way. It's always going back and forth. And I can totally own that it's possibly a war heart. So I appreciate you calling me out on that. Is that what Lindsay? Lindsay said that?
Yeah, I mean, I think people in those jobs are they're not the most fulfilling jobs, and
yeah,
it doesn't hurt us to provide them a sense of gratitude and value.
Okay. Yeah, I can see that perspective. Yeah. It doesn't mean I like it though.
I think the main thing here is that everybody is going to be a little bit different and have a different idea of what exactly will be a war of heart and war of peace. The main thing is to just really make sure that you're treating people as people, and in recognizing in yourself when you're starting to drift the other direction. There isn't really, in my mind, there isn't a hard and fast line, but I could be wrong on that as well.
No, I think, I mean, if you read the book, again, that's the whole idea, is that it's daily, right? Even my example of being in that target line, it just kind of took over me without me realizing it. And then it hit me like, oh, whoa, I'm like judging these people that I don't know what's going on in their lives, right? And so like Lindsay pointed out that there's these people that work in these possibly unfulfilling jobs. And yeah, I could be viewing them from a perspective of, man, I want to make this person's day better. So I totally, yeah, that's true. I appreciate that insight.
And then I think there's about one more question directed towards you, and then we'll give everybody a chance to get your contact information so they can reach out to you if that is something they'd like to do. But we had Jeremy ask, oops, chat in a different direction.
That was me, I'm here. I got it.
We had Jeremy ask, I'm curious as to what you think of intent versus action.
Can you be more specific?
Jeremy, if you
Jeremy?
are able to unmute or would like to continue. Oh, there he is.
I think that empathy has a lot to do with intent. At some point, there is a continuum.
You're hard to hear, Jeremy.
Okay, sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. I said empathy and intent, I feel, are very strongly tied to each other, but there's a point where action on the continuum becomes more important, right? So I'm asking you, in those, like, example of talking to a barista, for instance, the intent of the barista may vary, right? Maybe but maybe they're also intending to genuinely connect. Maybe they get a little, hit of joy from knowing that they're making a difference to somebody who comes through the drive-through, and it makes them feel more fulfilled. So my question to you is, in communication, that sense of intent versus action, which one do you feel is more important? Is it doing what you say you're going to do, even if, or is it a matter of the intent to do something that you're portraying to people that's genuine?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me personally, it's doing what you say you're going to do, because I have no idea what the intent is behind, this example, a Starbucks person saying, how's your day going? That I don't, and this could be just a personal thing for me, I don't like that question in general, because I think most people in our society say, oh, it's fine. And so I try to always come up with a different answer, because I don't like the F word for that. I don't like fine. And how's your day going? If I'm having a horrible day and I'm honest with this person, there's no time to have that like really authentic exchange, authentic connection, because they need to get to the person behind me. And I think, so I think, I don't know what their intent is. So I think the action part of what you had talked about, Jeremy, I think action is much more, for me personally, preferable, because I don't know what people's intent are. I can make assumptions about what people's intent are. But as we saw today, like my assumption of they're just doing idle chit chat, Lindsay has a different opinion on what the intent of that person is, or what my intent should be in interacting with them. So I don't know if that's helpful for you, Jeremy, but that's kind of my limited perspective on that.
David, I think that, I don't know what the intent of the barista is, if they really do care or not, but you do more harm by potentially reacting if you treat them as an object versus as a person. It doesn't hurt to treat them as a person, whether or not they treat you as a person.
Right. No, I agree. Totally. Like I enjoy this conversation, because I feel like then we start getting into philosophical ideas about how we treat people just in general. And I think, if any of you have social media, you've seen comments of people, of strangers, and I include myself in this, where strangers that never have met each other, never will meet one another, and how we treat each other unkindly. And I try to make a commitment to myself, and I've been pretty successful at it, is that if I see someone post something and it raises my blood pressure a little bit, I don't go onto their account and call them out. I always try to do private message, because I think what I've found is that private messages with people turn out much differently than public messages on a comment thread. So that's just my own thing. I mean, it works for me, and yeah.
And Dr. Simonson, a shout out to you too. I mean, there's been a lot of great stuff in this this talk today, and I really appreciate you coming on. But it's been talked about a couple of times, and I was thinking the same thing. As one comment was from Carice, that this was a beautiful example of a response that wasn't defensive and was willing to consider the point being made between you and Lindsay. I mean, that's That's my biggest, like, strongest takeaway is the way you handle that. You're like, wow, okay, that's a different opinion. I'll consider that. I'm open to it. I may or may not agree with it, but I'm not going to sit here and be, a dick about it or be aggressive about it. And that's what we need. Right there was a perfect example of what we need across this country to bring people together, is to be open to somebody else's opinion. So I thought that was a brilliant example of it, man. We should post that on Facebook somewhere. That entire interaction was amazing. So thank you for bringing that to us.
Yeah. I'm not always, you could ask my wife. I'm not always like pleasant and, or my children. I know Lindsay or Jaylyn had questions, but I mean, I don't know if we have enough time to go into them.
Yeah, we are running a little bit over today, but I mean, just the response and the amount of people that are invested in this conversation is just, it's blown me away personally. And I think that this might be something that we might want to revisit. I'd love to have you back on in one of our future master classes, Dr. Simonson. And yeah, if anybody would like to get in touch, you have your information on the screen here. But for now, we are going to let everyone go. Thank you so much again for being on and sharing all that insight with us. And if you're seeing the chat, there are several people there that are thanking you as well. So have a very happy Thanksgiving, everyone. Jeff, do you want to take
Thanks, you guys, for being on. Appreciate you guys. Thanks, Jaylyn, for monitoring everything. Thanks, Doctor, for coming on. That was just awesome. So thanks, you guys. Happy Thanksgiving to everyone, and hopefully we'll see you soon.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks. Bye, guys.
Thank you.